This just doesn't even do it justice. We have 41 packages here. Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be going through all of the orders we got over the weekend. We hit a massive record of 39 orders. So we're going to go ahead and package them up. I want to show you guys what each one sold for. We have quite a few movies, and I want to take you guys through all of that. I've also changed up how I list the games and movies as well. So typically I just post on ebay.ca, so the Canadian version, but I found this tool that actually posts on 7 different countries, so 7 different eBay sites, and I want to take you guys through that because I think that really helped out my sales. But let's go ahead and hop into the first couple of orders. So the very first order, someone bought 3 movies. So they are all Blu-rays. Unfortunately, this is how I have it set up at the moment. They're just in these boxes. They're not sorted alphabetically, so I'm going to have to go and find the movies. They are from Canada, so I do offer free shipping. I believe they got Despicable Me 3. So I'm going to go ahead and ship them all individually because it's still cheaper than putting them in one package. But I'm going to go ahead and find the movies. So I found the 3 movies. First off, Horton Hears a Who sold for $10. The Executive Decision sold for $12. And then Oceans, this triple feature of the Oceans movies, this one actually sold for $19. And I said before that it's actually cheaper to go and ship them individually because we're going to use these stamps. So they're $2.09 each, so it come out to about $6. And I just weighed it, and if I wanted to go and get tracking and put it all in one package, it would cost me $16. So we're definitely going to be shipping them individually. So I got the packages weighed out here, and these 2 here are under 100 grams, so that's when we can use the $2.09 stamp. This one is unfortunately over. It was about 135. This is the Ocean's 11, so it had like 3 or 4 discs in it. So we have to use a $2.92, 2.22 cents, and then 1 7-cent stamp because the postage required is $3.43. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up a counter now showing you exactly what the buyer paid. So that is before sales tax, that's before eBay fees, that's before shipping costs, all that stuff. And then what I got profit. So I have an Excel spreadsheet where I go and put in all the numbers, the shipping cost, what I paid for the product, all that stuff. So for this very first order, there was 3 movies. The buyer paid $46.11, and our total profit is $14.83. So that is a massive difference, but I mean, $5 immediately goes to the government for sales tax. The eBay fees are 13.25%. You guys saw the shipping costs. Like, there's a lot of fees involved, but $14.83 profit is actually pretty good, and I'm actually excited about that. I totally forgot to show you guys this before we started, but I took a screenshot. So as you guys can see, we had 36 orders. This is an individual item, so 39 individual items. We had a couple that people purchased multiple items, and the total revenue comes to $736.90. So this is, again, before shipping, before eBay, before any tax. But $736 over the weekend in revenue is just amazing. Again, this is such a massive record for me. On to the second order, we have the Jack Ryan 5 movie collection. This one actually sold for $20. Let's go and get it packaged up. So this one, again, is super heavy. I didn't mention last time, if it's actually over 200 grams, I can't even ship it like this. So I'm just using letter mail with stamps. And the maximum is 200 grams. So I would have to go and pay for a package, which is typically about $15. So it's extremely expensive compared to this if it's over 200 grams. So for the second order, it was just the 1 movie. The buyer paid $22.59, and our total profit is $11.15. For these cheaper movies, you know, anything like under $50, the fees and the shipping costs are going to be right around that 50%. So the margins are pretty bad. But, you know, $11.15 off 1 movie, I will take it. So next up are actually 2 hockey cards. These sold for $10. So for the hockey cards, I'm actually selling them for my uncle, so I don't know exactly what he paid for them, but the buyer paid $11.19, and after the shipping cost of the stamp and the envelopes, we're walking away with $8.85. So for order number 4, we sold a movie. I totally forgot to go ahead and film it before I packaged it up, but it was called The World's End, and this one is a great example. I'm glad one of these popped up because this is the least amount that I charge for a video game, a movie, pretty much anything, because I offer free shipping. So this one sold for $7.99, and after taxes and all that, they paid $9.19. I'm walking away with $3.41 profit. So it's about 30% of what the buyer paid. Luckily for this movie, I paid like 50 cents for it. I paid next to nothing. But if I would have paid a little bit more, if video games, for example, sometimes I pay up to $2 for them. So this profit could have been a lot less. But this is a great example of pretty much the worst case scenario. $3.41 profit is not great. So order number 5 is actually a loose game. We have Need for Speed Pro Straight for the Xbox 360. About a third of my games are loose. As you guys can see, we have so many of them. The binder's actually almost completely filled. Some of them are scratched. This one is actually one that works and is perfectly fine. Some of them don't work. This one's stuck sinking trophies. But for the most part, they are pretty scratched. I'm waiting until I get a disc resurfacing machine to go through, fix them all, and then get them all listed. But this one sold today. So that one makes order number 5. And this one is super exciting because this is actually the first one so far today that sold on the American eBay. So I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I'm posting on there as well. So by default, all of my listings go on the Canadian version of eBay. Now, while I do offer shipping to the US and every other country in the world, and I have gotten quite a few orders from the USA, what I'm doing now is I'm actually listing them on ebay.com. So previously people would have to physically type in ebay.ca to see my listings and purchase it. Now, if someone's in the USA, they just type in eBay, it automatically brings them to ebay.com and they can see my listing. This goes the same for people in Australia, in the United Kingdom, all over. I have my listings on their country's eBay, which is awesome. And I think this is really going to increase my sales. I am still working on importing everything. It is taking a little bit longer than I initially anticipated. It's been about a week now, and I have 1,200 out of 1,400 listings on the USA. The rest of them are quite a bit lower, but for Pro Street, I've converted it to Canadian. So they paid $17.40 and my profit is $5.09. The reason why it's quite a bit less there is because shipping to the States always has tracking. So the buyer paid $6.99 in shipping and it cost me $7.02, I think, to purchase the label. But that is the nice thing too with going to the States is there's always tracking. And 99% of the time, it's actually cheaper to ship to the States with tracking than it is within Canada with tracking. Because to the States, it doesn't matter where it is, no matter where they are, if they're in Puerto Rico, if they're in Texas, it doesn't matter. The shipping is always going to be the same price. It just matters on the size and the weight and stuff like that. Whereas within Canada, if someone's in the middle of nowhere, it is extremely expensive to ship to them compared to being in a massive city with an airport right by. So the pricing can vary from like $18 I've seen as much as, or if someone lives in downtown Toronto, it's only about $8. So it's about the same as going to the States. So I didn't even do this on purpose. I'm just going in the order that people purchased on eBay, but we have another copy of Need for Speed Pro Street. This one's a complete in-box version for the PS3. This one sold for $15. So for the Need for Speed, the buyer paid $17.23 and our profit is $8.65. This was another one that was stamps and it was a little bit heavier, so we had to pay $3.43 in postage. But yeah, $8.65 is pretty good for a video game. Order number 7 is Say Anything. This is a movie. It sold for $13.59. The reason why it's a weird number is because I actually sent this person an offer. I believe I was asking like $16. I sent them 20% off and they ended up buying it. For order number 7, the buyer paid at $15.36 and we profited $8.42. Order number 8, Rob Roy, sold for $11.99. For order number 8, Rob Roy, buyer paid $13.79 and our profit is $6.35. Order number 9 is The Addams Family, a 2-movie collection. This is another one that sold for a weird amount, $9.59, just because I sent them an offer. So for order number 9, The Addams Family, the buyer paid $10.74 and our profit was $3. This is one that I sent them an offer. We've had this one in the collection for a while, so I thought I may as well move it, but I probably should have left it. It was only 20% off, so I mean, at most, we probably would have made like an extra buck, but $3 on a $10.74 purchase isn't great. We have another order where they bought 2 movies. We have Romancing the Stone for $9.99 and The Jewel of the Nile for $11.99. So for order number 10, this person bought 2 movies. Again, I'd love to go ahead and ship them together and get tracking, but it is just like triple or sometimes even quadruple the price. So the buyer paid $24.39, and after all the fees, we came out with a profit of $11.38. So less than 50% this time, but 11 bucks is 11 bucks. So we have our very first PS2 game. We have Saturday Night Speedway. This one sold for $13.99. So for order number 11, this was Saturday Night Speedway. The buyer paid $28.78. The reason why it was so much is because this game is going all the way to the United Kingdom, and I charged $9.99 in shipping, and the shipping label actually cost me $11. So I actually lost a little bit of money on the shipping, and our profit came out to $7.04. So way less than 50%. I mean, that's like 20, 25, 30% profit, but that's because the shipping cost is just so expensive. The game sold for $13.99 and they paid $9.99 in shipping. So can't really expect to make 50% profit margins when your shipping is just about as much as the game sold for. Order number 12 is the Demolition Man. This one sold for $7.99. So order number 12, Demolition Man, the buyer paid $9.19 and we profited $3.89. Again, this was one that sold for $7.99, so not great. Guys, we have done it. So as I'm filming this video, we just got one more order, making this 40 orders over the weekend. And this is a special one because this is my first ever sale on the Italian eBay. So this is ebay.it, and it is Death Proof, a movie. I am just so excited that we're finally seeing sales on international eBay sites. And I just really, really wish I would have done this earlier. But let's go ahead and get this one packaged up. So for this one, I'm actually going to use some of my special envelopes. I have a few eBay branded envelopes. They are quite a bit more expensive, so I don't use them very often. But the buyer paid 7.49 euros, which comes out to about $11 Canadian. So I took a screenshot here of my shipping options. So shipping to international countries is a little bit more complicated because here in Canada, we obviously are using Canada Post, but they don't have that in Italy. So I can't select that as a shipping method. So I just put standard shipping, but the issue with that is I give them the expected delivery date of July 15th. And this is the one that I would go ahead and select because they didn't pay extra for tracking. So I would choose the middle one there, but the expected delivery date goes all the way to the 25th. Now, 10 days later is just way too long. So this is an adjustment that I'm gonna have to go and make on the Italian eBay site. I'm gonna push back the estimated delivery date for the next sale or the next time I get an order on here. So this time we're actually gonna go ahead and purchase this one, give them tracking for free, and it's gonna arrive sooner than they expect, hopefully. And it's only $4 more, so it's not insanely expensive, but I probably will lose money on this sale. So the buyer paid $25.65 Canadian, that's converted from the euro, and we actually ended up losing $1.77 on this sale, which is totally all right. I'm glad it happened on one of these cheaper movies rather than someone, buying something really expensive and then I'm out a lot of money on the shipping. So I'm going to go ahead and get that adjusted. So for the next time I get a sale, I'm not going to be losing money, and we can go ahead and push back the estimated delivery date. But again, $1.70 loss is really nothing. And I'm happy that we got tracking and that this buyer is still going to go ahead and get the order. It would be such a bad idea to go ahead and cancel the order because that affects my seller rating. And that just looks bad on a seller to go ahead and cancel order because I'm going to lose $1. I really don't care. I'm totally fine with that. Glad we got our first Italian order. That is amazing. Our only PS4 game is MLB The Show 18. This one sold for $8.99. I do have quite a few MLB games for the PS4. I got this in a bundle for like 20 bucks for like 8 of them. We sold quite a few, but the rest of them are selling pretty slow, so I'm glad to get rid of this one. So this one was sold on the Canadian eBay, but it is actually going all the way over to France. So the buyer paid $22.78, again, $9.99 for shipping. It actually cost me like $10.02. We pretty much broke even on the shipping. When I list the games, I go ahead and add about $3 to each one. So if I'm going to list it for 10, I'll list it for 13 just to go ahead and cover the shipping costs. Profit, we came out with $4.90. That is pretty good, to be honest with you, for a sports game that sold for $8.99. I'm really, really happy with that. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, this one sold for $10.39, another one that I sent an offer for. So for this one, the buyer paid $11.74, and we're walking away with $4.44 profit. For order number 16, we have a loose copy of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. This is greatest hits version for the PS3. This one sold for $13.99. So for GTA San Andreas, the buyer paid $22.98. This is another one that is going international. I can't even pronounce the country, so I'm not even going to try, but we profited $7.28 on this order. Order number 17 is Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Blacklist. This is another one that sold on eBay.com, so the American version of eBay. So the profit margins on this order are really, really bad. This was another one that sold in the American eBay. So the buyer paid $21.92 Canadian and her profit was $3.63. This was one of the first games I ended up buying. It was within the first month. And I ended up paying $4 for this game, which is just crazy. Like for video games, PS3 especially, lots of times I can find them for around $1. $3.63 profit. I guess I'm just glad to get rid of it. This is the very first sealed movie that we have sold today. This one also sold on the American eBay. So Contact sold for $21.24 is what the buyer paid, and our profit is $7.11. Next up is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This is the extended edition Blu-ray. There's like 4 discs in each case there. There's like 12 discs total. The buyer paid so much for this. We got it packaged up. I had to use one of the bigger envelopes that I have, but the buyer paid $53.23 Canadian, and we walked away with a profit of $22.89. The shipping came out to about $12, which is crazy cheap compared to what it would have been if it was sold in Canada. It was actually sold on the American eBay as well, but $22.89 is pretty good. I'm really happy about that. Order number 20 is Call of Duty 3 for the PS3. So for Call of Duty 3, this was sold on the American eBay, and it was actually purchased from someone in Australia. Like, it's so cool. I'm so glad that I set up these international sites. But the buyer paid $32.58 Canadian, and our profit is $8.36. Again, the shipping was super expensive. It was over $12. So a profit of $8.36 isn't bad. Next up is Independence Day. This one's staying within Canada. For Independence Day, the buyer paid $11.49, and we're walking away with a flat $5 profit. Pretty good. Next up is the Money Pit. This one sold on the Canadian eBay, but is going to the United States. For this one, the buyer paid $14.82, and we profited $4.69. This was another one where I paid a little bit too much for it. For movies, like spend less than $1 if I can. I think this one was like $1.50. So $4.69 profit. We got another PS3 game, Diablo 3. Really doesn't sell for that much. This one went for $7.99. I think this one is going to be the least amount of profit we see today. The buyer paid $9.03, and we walked away with $2.47 profit. Next up, we have London Has Fallen. This one's also staying within Canada. For London Has Fallen, the buyer paid $9.19, and we're looking at $4.03 profit. We sold our only PS1 game, Pac-Man World, sold for $14.99. For Pac-Man, the buyer paid $16.79, and profit was $8.05. Another PS3 game, we sold Far Cry 3. So for Far Cry 3, the buyer paid $7.90, and our profit is $2.07. Not great. Next up is Absolute Power. For Absolute Power, the buyer paid $9.14, and our profit is $4.03. Next up is the movie Young Guns. For Young Guns, the buyer paid $9.03, and our profit was $3.59. So the next order is Stir Crazy. This is another brand new sealed one, and I unfortunately put this one in the wrong shipping policy. So this one is $40. And it should have been in the one where they had to buy tracked shipping, but they didn't. So I'm going to go ahead and add tracking for free. It's going to cost me about $5 more, but I think it's worth it. So for that one, the buyer paid $39.19. And even after paying out of pocket the extra $5 or $6 for tracked shipping, we still profited $19.04. I think that was a great idea. I have had a couple packages go missing before, and I have to fully refund the buyer. And this way, if it does go missing, if that happens, Canada Post writes me a check. I've had that happen before as well, and it's a super easy process. So for an expensive movie like this, I'd rather not, lose out the money on the shipping, lose out the money on the product itself, and have to refund the buyer the $39.19. Just not something I want to take the risk on. Our next game is Star Wars The Force Unleashed for the PS3. This was another one in that binder, and this one is in great condition as well. For Star Wars, the buyer paid $9.03 and our profit was $3.81. Next up is the Sister Act 1 and 2. This one's going to the States, so it has tracking and insurance. So for the Sister Act, the buyer paid $27.80 and we're walking away with a profit of $12.78. South Park, The Stick of Truth is going all the way over to the United Kingdom. For the South Park, the buyer paid $23.98 because, again, it's going over to the United Kingdom, and our profit was $6.18. V.I. Warshawski is another one that's going all the way over to the United Kingdom. For that one, the buyer paid $33.58, and we're walking away with a profit of $11.98. That's pretty good considering the shipping was like almost half of what the buyer paid, so I'm happy with that. Next up, we have Passenger 57. For Passenger 57, the buyer paid $12.64, and our profit was $5.78. Next up, we have this really cool 30th anniversary Labyrinth, I think. It is actually a Blu-ray, and it's like this book inside, so there's like some information on it and stuff like that. Super, super cool edition. So for that one, the buyer paid $20.33 with a profit of $9.54. The next movie is Sling Blade. So with Sling Blade, we had some great profit here. So it was an expensive one. The buyer was from the US, so we had shipping and tracking and insurance. And the buyer paid $47.68 with our profit of $28.67. Great, great sale. And for the very last order, we have Men in Black, the 4-movie collection. So for Men in Black, the buyer paid $22.22, and we had a profit margin of $9.78. And less than a minute after the last clip, we got one last order, making this 41 sales. And for the very last sale, the buyer paid $15.74 with a profit of $9.76. This just doesn't even do it justice. We have 41 packages here. All the ones on the top are all the ones that are letter mail. So staying within Canada, no tracking. All the ones down here are potentially staying in Canada, but they all have tracking and insurance. Like, this is just insane. So many more than I have ever done before. Okay, so I'm going through and editing the video right now, and I have the numbers. So out of all of the 41 orders that we had, we came out with $294 in pure profit. That is awesome. That was right around where I thought we would be. I thought we'd be between $300 and $350, so a little bit less, but our total revenue was $765. We had less than a 50% profit margin, but I want to explain that a little bit. I wish I would have done that number a little bit differently. I was including the sales tax. So some people, like in the UK and stuff, I mean, they pay an insane amount of sales tax. That was thrown in there. The eBay fees. So whenever I sell in this category, movies or video games, they take 12.35% right off the top. And then I also advertise for these games and movies. So if they do sell through an advertising, it's anywhere from 2 to 5% that gets taken off as well. So a lot of that money I don't ever see. And then another massive expense is shipping. Like, if there was any way to go ahead and reduce my shipping costs, that would be phenomenal, but I really don't think there is. Canada Post at the moment is pretty much the cheapest. UPS is cheaper for really big things. Like if I'm selling consoles, lots of times they go UPS, and especially if they're going to the States, they go UPS. But for just the small games that I'm sending in these bubble envelopes, Canada Post is the cheapest at the moment, even if they're going to the UK and stuff. So I think take the revenue number with a grain of salt, but it's awesome to see that, you know, $294 in sales over the weekend. That's really good for me. Happy with that. If you divide that by 41, so the total orders, you get $7.18 is the average profit per order, which is really, really good. Considering a lot of the stuff that I sell is, you know, cheaper games. I mean, that's a little high because we did sell a couple expensive movies, but that was, a lot higher than I thought it would be. Now, so today's video was mainly just the eBay orders, but I also did sell some stuff on Facebook. So On Friday, I had someone message me and they wanted to go and pick up 2 games. They picked up Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 1 for the PS3. I sold those for $10 and $15, so we came in with $35 there. And then I also did sell an Xbox One with a couple games. I made a TikTok about that. We sold that for $150, and the console I only paid $40 for. The Xbox games I got in other bundles, so it came out to about $1 a game. So all in, we were like $43 when we sold it for $150. So we had some insane profit margins on that. The consoles on eBay typically don't sell as good as they do on Facebook just because the high shipping cost. The consoles I'll have listed, if it's a regular PS3, I can list it for like $160, $150 because the eBay fees, again, 12.35%, but the buyer has to pay taxes. They also have to go and pay for the shipping, which, if they're in the States, it can be, around $30. I sold a backwards compatible PS3 and it cost $36 to ship to the States. So shipping isn't cheap, and that is why I'm mainly sticking to games and movies on eBay. They're working really, really good. The consoles are selling pretty good on Facebook and Kijiji though, so I'm making a lot of local sales on those. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I may do another one in the future, but this was kind of like a one-off thing because I don't normally get this many orders, and I'm sorry that it was so long, but thank you guys for sticking around to the end, and I will catch you in the next one.